back. So you know how it goes. Life gets crazy, your schedule's packed, and suddenly you're looking at your workout plan like, oh no, there's no way I can actually stick to this.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Totally. And the big question is just how much can you actually cut back and still, not totally lose all the progress you've made?
It's a good question, and thankfully it's one that some researchers have actually looked into.
Oh, nice. So what kind of study was this? What were they looking at specifically?
So they were looking at strength and muscle primarily. They started with a group of young women and they put them through 12 weeks of this pretty intense training program. They called it concurrent training.
Okay, so is that like, what is concurrent training? Is that like CrossFit or something?
It's similar in the sense that it involves doing both strength training and cardio at the same time. Kind of a popular approach these days, hitting all the bases.
Makes sense. So these women, they weren't exactly starting from scratch, right? They already had a decent fitness level.
Exactly. And those first 12 weeks, they really saw some great results. Like they had huge increases in their strength, how much they could lift, but also in their actual muscle size. They were actually seeing changes in their, get this, their muscle morphology.
Okay, hold on. Muscle morphology. Now you're just using big words to make me feel dumb. What does that even mean?
Okay, fair enough. Basically, think of it like this. Their muscle fibers were actually getting thicker and denser. And the way those fibers were arranged, it was becoming more efficient. Like it was like they were upgrading their muscles to be stronger and more powerful.
So they were basically leveling up their muscles.
Pretty much. But here's where it gets really interesting. After those 12 weeks, they divided these women into three groups.
Okay, so what, like a control group in?
Yeah, one group kept going with the twice-a-week training. That was the control group. Another group they scaled back to once a week.
Okay, once a week, I could see that.
And then, and this is where it gets kind of wild, the third group, they only trained once every 2 weeks.
Wait, hold on. Once every 2 weeks, like twice a month.
Yeah.
Did they just like turn into couch potatoes?
You'd think, right? But you might be surprised. They actually kept track of their strength and muscle size throughout the whole thing to see what would happen.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What happened to the twice a month crew?
Well, the results were actually pretty amazing. Even with that, like, crazy reduction in how often they were working out, they held on to a lot of their gains, at least for the first 6 weeks or so.
Seriously. So even cutting back to like 2 workouts a month, they were still almost as strong and ripped as before.
Pretty much. I mean, think about it. You're working out half as often or even like a quarter as often as you used to.
Yeah, that really makes you rethink that whole I got to hit the gym 5 days a week thing, doesn't it?
It definitely challenges the conventional wisdom. But there's a catch, of course. They didn't just like slack off during those workouts. They actually kept the same intensity and volume as they were doing before. Like they were still pushing themselves as hard, even with fewer workouts.
So it's more about quality over quantity, right? Like making those workouts really count. But okay, let's get specific. What happened to their strength? Did they like lose a lot of strength?
So both the weekly and the biweekly groups, they held on to their strength for at least those first 6 weeks. And even the ones working out every other week, they only had a small drop in how much they could lift. They were still way stronger than before the whole program started.
So even if you really have to cut back, you're not going to like instantly lose all your gains. That's actually pretty good to know. But what about muscle? Did they stay ripped?
Okay, so this is where we start to see a bit of a difference between the groups. The weekly training group, they pretty much maintained all of their muscle size, like it was locked in.
Nice. Makes you want to try to squeeze in at least one good workout a week, huh?
For sure. But now, the group that was only working out every other week, they did see a little bit of muscle loss, but it was really small. They kept something like 94% of their gains.
Wait, 94%?
Yeah.
That's practically nothing. So even with just a couple workouts a month, they barely lost any muscle definition.
It's pretty impressive. It seems like once you build up that base of strength and muscle, your body really holds on to it, even if you're not hitting the gym as often.
Man, this is giving me hope for those weeks when I'm just slammed. But what about people who just totally stop? Like full on couch potato mode. Did they look at that too?
Yeah. They had a group they called the detraining group. They stopped training completely, and yeah, they saw the biggest drops in everything: strength, muscle size, even their cardio fitness.
So use it or lose it is still a thing.
It seems so. After 12 weeks of doing nothing, they had lost almost all of the gains they had made.
Ouch. That's a good reminder that even if you have to cut back, some consistency is key. So we know cutting back doesn't mean instant muscle meltdown, and being a total couch potato is, well, not great.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what were like the most noticeable changes in their actual muscle structure, that morphology thing you were talking about?
Okay, so they use these like ultrasound images to track the changes in their muscles. And they were really focused on this one muscle in the quads. It's called the vastus lateralis.
Vastus lateralis, isn't that like the muscle that makes your thighs look good?
That's the one. And they found that even the group working out every other week, just those 2 workouts a month, they were still seeing significant changes in this muscle.
So even that minimal amount of training was enough to keep those muscles like growing and changing.
Yep. They saw increases in muscle thickness, and they also saw these changes in the angle of the muscle fibers, which is another sign of growth and adaptation. So they measured 2 main things. One was the muscle thickness, pretty straightforward, like how thick is that vastus lateralis getting?
Okay, that makes sense.
And the other thing they looked at was something called fascicle angle.
Okay, fascicle angle. Now you're just showing off. Break that one down for me. What is a fascicle anyway?
Okay, so imagine your muscles are like a bundle of ropes, right? Each rope is a fascicle, basically a bunch of muscle fibers all grouped together. And the angle of those, like ropes, the way they attach to your tendons, that's the fascicle angle.
Interesting. So why does the angle even matter?
Well, it can really affect how much force your muscles can produce. Like, think of it like leverage, right? If the angle is better, your muscles can pull on your bones more effectively, which makes you stronger.
So even with less training, they were still able to keep those fascicles at a good angle for strength. That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Shows how adaptable our bodies are, you know? Even when we have to cut back, they find ways to hold on to those gains.
This is good news for anyone who's ever stressed about missing a few workouts. But let's switch gears a bit. We've been talking about muscles and strength, but what about cardio? That whole being able to run up a flight of stairs without dying thing.
Yeah.
Did they look at how that was affected by different training frequencies?
They did. And those results were pretty encouraging, too. Remember, they were doing that concurrent training, so they were building strength and cardio at the same time.
Right, right. The classic strength and cardio combo.
Yeah.
So how did their cardio, their aerobic power hold up when they cut back?
Well, the group that kept training every week, they maintained their gains. No surprise there.
Right, consistency and all that. But what about the every other week group? Did they lose a bunch of their cardio fitness?
Nope, not really. They actually held on to about 91% of their aerobic power, even with those less frequent workouts.
Hold on. So even cutting back to like 2 cardio sessions a month, they barely lost any of their endurance.
Yeah, it's impressive. Seems like even a little bit of cardio goes a long way as long as you're still challenging yourself.
This is making me rethink my whole workout schedule. But I got to ask, did they follow up with these women after the 12 weeks? Like, did they try going back to more frequent workouts?
Unfortunately, they didn't. The study only covered those 12 weeks. It would be really interesting to see how the body responds to ramping things back up after a period of reduced training.
Yeah, that would be cool to see. Like, what's the best way to get back on track after you've had to take a break? But okay, so for now, sticking with what we do know, we've covered strength, muscle size, and aerobic power. Did they find anything else that was interesting, like any other physiological adaptations?
Actually, yeah. There's one thing I think you'll find pretty interesting. They measured changes in heart rate during those moderate intensity exercises, specifically at 100 watts and 125 watts on a stationary bike.
So basically, how hard their hearts were working at a given effort level.
Exactly. And the results were pretty telling. For the weekly training group, their heart rate actually went down at both of those power outputs, which means their cardiovascular system was getting more efficient.
So even though they were working out less often, their hearts were getting stronger and more efficient.
Yep. And for the biweekly group, their heart rate stayed pretty much the same. So even the less frequent training was enough to prevent any major decline in their cardiovascular efficiency.
That's good news for those of us who need to cut back but still want to keep our hearts healthy. But how is it possible that they were able to maintain so much of their fitness with, like, way fewer workouts? What's the science behind that?
Well, there are a few things going on. One is this idea of muscle memory.
Ooh, muscle memory. I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
So it's not really memory in the traditional sense, but our muscles do have this amazing ability to remember past training adaptations, even after periods of inactivity.
So like our muscles have a blueprint of their previous state.
Mm.
and they can use that to bounce back faster.
That's a good way to think about it. And it seems like the more consistent your training has been in the past, the stronger this muscle memory effect is.
That makes sense. Like with anything, the more you practice, the easier it is to pick it back up again,
Yeah.
even if you take a break.
Exactly. And another thing that helps is the intensity of those less frequent workouts.
Right, like we were talking about before, quality over quantity.
Yeah, when you train less often but still maintain that same level of effort, you're sending a signal to your body that you still need those strength and muscle adaptations.
So our bodies are like, okay, I see you're still serious about this. I'm going to hold on to these gains just in case.
Exactly. Our bodies are amazingly adaptable. They respond to the demands we put on them.
So what does all this mean for the people listening? Like, if they're facing a time where they have to reduce their workouts, what are the main takeaways from this research?
Well, first of all, don't panic. It is totally possible to cut back without losing all of your progress. This study shows that even once a week seems to be enough to maintain most of your gains for at least a few months.
That's great to hear. It's like, it's okay to prioritize other things in your life without feeling like you're completely ruining your fitness goals.
Exactly. And even once every 2 weeks can help you keep a surprising amount, especially in those first few weeks.
But the key is to keep those workouts intense, right? Like, no slacking off just because you're going less often.
Right. Challenge yourself during each session, focus on good form, and try to keep a similar workload as you were doing before.
And listen to your body, of course.
Yeah.
If you need an extra rest day, take it. It's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. And remember, this research gives you the knowledge to make good decisions about your fitness journey. No matter what life throws at you, you have the power to adapt and keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like you're taking control. You're not just letting your schedule dictate your fitness.
Right, exactly.
So, okay, let's recap this for everyone listening. If you have to cut back on your workouts for a while, what are the biggest takeaways from all of this?
I think the most important thing is to remember that you don't have to lose all your progress. You can scale back and still maintain a lot of those gains you worked so hard for.
Right, like it's okay to miss a few workouts.
Yeah.
You're not going to wake up one morning and suddenly be back at square one.
Exactly. The study showed that even working out once a week can be enough to keep most of your gains for at least 12 weeks.
That's reassuring. And I think, for a lot of people that feels doable. Like you can usually squeeze in one workout a week, even when things are hectic.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you can only manage once every 2 weeks, you can still hold on to a surprising amount, especially in the short term.
But the key is to really make those workouts count,
Yeah.
right? Like don't just phone it in because you're only going once a week or whatever.
Totally. You got to bring the intensity, focus on good form, and try to keep up a similar workload as you were doing before, even if you're doing fewer exercises.
And don't forget to listen to your body, right?
Yeah.
Like if you need a rest day, take a rest day. It's about finding what's sustainable for you.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, this research shows that you have options. You can adapt your training to fit your life. You have the knowledge now to make smart choices about your fitness, no matter what's going on.
I love that. It's like you're not a slave to your workout schedule. You can adjust and adapt and still reach your goals. So I guess a final question for everyone listening is, if you could only work out once a week or even every other week for a while, how would you approach it? What would your priorities be?
That's a good question. Maybe you'd focus on compound exercises that work a lot of different muscles at the same time, or prioritize the exercises you actually enjoy the most, the ones that keep you motivated.
Yeah, I think it's really about figuring out what works best for you and your situation. There's no right or wrong answer.
Exactly. The main thing is to keep moving, to keep challenging yourself, even if it looks a little different than usual.
And remember, something is always better than nothing. Don't let a busy schedule or a little setback completely derail your fitness journey. You've got this.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. We've learned so much about how our bodies adapt to changes in our training.
It's been a pleasure chatting about this with you.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this journey of fitness exploration. Until next time, keep those muscles working and stay curious.